Welcome to the 700 Club. They say it has more power than twice all of the armaments that were exploded during World War II. That's how much power Hurricane Irma has as it begins its path of destruction, starting in the Caribbean, where it's already devastated some islands there. When it gets to the United States, nobody is sure exactly what's going to happen. I was down in Florida in the Homestead area when Andrew, right after Andrew, and folks, you cannot conceive of the devastation. You just cannot conceive of it. House after house after house condemned. It had to be torn down. The roof of one major church was destroyed. The thing had collapsed on them. And it went on and on and on. And they say that this is much worse than Andrew. It could, in fact, become the most expensive storm in the history of the United States.
Well, Irma's on a path to make landfall in Florida, along with Georgia and possibly the Carolinas. And as Gary Lane reports, people in the path of this monster storm are preparing for the worst.
Hurricane Irma barreled through the southern Caribbean on its way toward the U.S., packing 180-mile-per-hour sustained winds, bringing death and destruction to Barbuda and submerged streets to the island of St. Martin. Thomas Road pastor Jonathan Falwell gave his wife a surprise wedding anniversary gift, a trip to St. Martin. The two were trapped on the island when the hurricane hit. He posted photos of the destruction on social media and tweeted, "We are safe. No power, everything destroyed. Buildings gone. Please pray as this island is decimated." Heavy rain hammered Puerto Rico and caused power outages affecting 1 million people. More than 1,000 sought safety in shelters. Parts of the island could be without power for 4 to 6 months. In the Florida Keys, 25,000 people have already been evacuated. Mandatory evacuations took place in some Miami neighborhoods, and traffic jams on some evacuation routes were commonplace.
I've been through George, been through Andrew, been through Wilma, but I'm not staying for Irma.
Evacuees from the Florida and Georgia coasts are seeking refuge in hotel rooms in central Georgia. Most are sold out. Florida Governor Rick Scott warned people to find a safe place.
Every Floridian should take this seriously and be aggressive to protect their family. Possessions can be replaced, your family cannot.
Floridians emptied store shelves of water, milk, and bread and waited in long gas lines to fill up their fuel tanks.
Gas is running out everywhere right now, so I'm just a little too late trying to get it, I guess.
The latest storm track shows Irma downgrading to a Category 4 storm, possibly making landfall or skirting by Florida's east coast, and then moving up to the Georgia coast and South Carolina. Irma could cause a great deal of damage, just as Hurricane Harvey did when it flooded parts of Texas. That would mean more disaster relief spending from Washington, where President Trump struck a deal with Democrats Wednesday to raise the government's debt ceiling, a deal that included relief funding to help after Harvey. And as it did before Harvey, OB is busy preparing for potential disaster in Florida. Truckloads of water and food supplies are now being staged at its Ocala, Florida warehouse. And that means Operation Blessing volunteers are ready to move into action whenever and wherever Hurricane Irma makes landfall. Gary Lane, CBN News.
With us now is the head of Operation Blessing, Bill Horan. This Irma is coming. Are we positioned, ready to go in Florida?
Absolutely, Pat.
What you got?
Well, we've got our distribution hub, our storm headquarters right there in Ocala. We've been there since September of 2004. So we've got our warehouse well stocked. I just talked to Steve O'Grady on the phone moments ago. We've got 12 truckloads of water. Each truckload has 35,000 bottles of water on board. So we've got that ready and staged, along with food, diapers, hygiene stuff, all kinds of materials and equipment. David and I are going down in the morning to Ocala, and we'll be there before the storm comes, and then during we'll be well positioned to help coordinate things afterwards.
How is this going to be different from Harvey?
Well, Harvey is, Pat, I got to tell you, I've been seeing a lot of storms in my life, nothing like Harvey. And it's like a nightmare that never ends. Every morning you get up and it's like it starts over. All that water's coming down from North Texas, and they're still pulling people off rooftops in some places yesterday. So it's so widespread. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So we expect, I think the flooding by far is the worst thing that's happened to Texas. It's going to be the wind and, of course, the water on the ocean front, the tide surge.
You know, I was there, and as I say, that big one that hit Florida a few years ago that was so devastating. They had actually tornadoes inside of the hurricane, and they went up to 210 miles an hour, and it just ripped everything to pieces. And that's what Irma is supposed to do. They say it's so big we can't even conceive of anything that enormous.
They say the eye is 23 miles in diameter. 180 plus mile an hour winds for 35 hours now as of 5 a.m. this morning. You can imagine the amount of water that's pushing past.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so flat down there. We really need to pray for the people in Florida.
Puerto Rico, part of it may be without power for as much as 4 to 6 months. Have you heard about Puerto Rico?
Well, of course, they're bankrupt, you know.
I know they're bankrupt,
and Zika is all over the place, mosquitoes. Mentioning mosquitoes, when we were down in Rockport on Saturday, we had 870 volunteers helping homeowners down there. And mosquitoes were swarming, man. I mean, they were thirsty. They were biting everybody. So you've got all that going on in Puerto Rico, and there's no telling now. Fortunately, the storm clocked a couple degrees north, so they didn't get the full brunt, it looks like. I'm sure.
Where is it going? Do we know the track yet of Irma, or where it's going to?
Well, the big thing is where and when is it going to make its turn north? And there's all the tracks, the spaghetti tracks and all that. It's still looking like it's going to barrel right into the Keys and into South Florida, Miami, and that area. But it could be over in the interior of the state. And heaven help them if it does that. It'll be like splitting the goalposts, and both coasts will get it. But it could turn sooner, it could turn later.
Is there any chance that thing will jump into the Gulf, do you think?
There's about a 10% chance, they're saying.
Is that it?
And again, it's all depending on when it pivots and goes north.
Yeah.
So, boy, that'd be something if it comes back into the Gulf.
This is a Category 5. It's the biggest one, I think, to come off the Atlantic in the history of America. What do you think? I mean, these are disasters of biblical proportion, one right after the other, like body blows to the United States.
Yeah, I don't know, Pat. I don't spill a lot of fuel wondering why. We're just kind of living day by day now.
Yeah.
But just think it formed in the Atlantic to that intensity, and now it's in the Caribbean. It's even warmer water. Yeah. So they're hoping it'll back off to a 4 by the time it gets to Florida, but it could crank right back up to a 5.
You know, Operation Blessing has been, you know, well, it's been recognized along the way, but there was a special gift that Operation Blessing got the other day to help in this disaster relief. You want to talk about it?
Well, we were honored to be one of 12 recipients of cash from the president and his wife, personal money. And we just feel we're very pleased with that and very honored that the president thinks that much of Operation Blessing.
It was nice. He gave $1 million of his own money, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. He put his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, $25,000 going to Operation Blessing.
Yes, sir.
Hey, that's nice. What are you going to do with it?
Well, we'll put it to good use, I guarantee you that.
Okay. Well, Bill, you're doing a great job. You got the volunteers ready to go, and will they be able to move in Florida? I mean, will the roads be so jammed they can't move, or there was a problem in Texas just getting through all that water?
Yeah, that's going to be one of the big challenges, Pat, is logistics, traffic jams, and there's just no telling what's going to happen there. We're as prepared as you can be. Right now, we have have served 10 different communities in Texas. That whole coast, all the way from Rockport, all the way over to Port Arthur, and in between, we're making cash grants to the real action-oriented churches that are really helping the folks over there. We've got truckloads of food and water going down there. Jody's down there with our team. We're running volunteer operations in 3 different communities right now. So here comes Irma, but we're as ready as we can be.
Okay. Bill Horan, ladies and gentlemen, for Operation Blessing, if you want to participate, they need your money. They need help. And it's easy to remember, Operation Blessing, emergency relief effort. It's CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23463, or you can call on the telephone, and the phone is so easy to remember. It's 707,000, 707,000. But, I mean, this is one of the great charities, frankly. It's one of the most efficient, if not perhaps the most efficient in the nation. And I'm just really thrilled. Bill, you're doing a terrific job. God bless you, man.
Thank you, Pat, and God bless you.
Well, in other news, reforming the tax code and cutting tax rates are still among the biggest issues in Washington. Republicans say they believe they can pass a plan that will bring more jobs and more prosperity to America, and it will strengthen the economy. Our Abigail Robertson has that story.
Republicans in the House, Senate, and White House are forging ahead on tax reform, promising to simplify the tax code in a way that provides relief for all Americans.
Our tax code is a giant self-inflicted economic wound. We need tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and yes, pro-American.
President Trump's daughter Ivanka is also getting actively involved in the administration's push to reform the tax code. She spoke to a group of pro-family advocates this week alongside members of Congress to discuss ways to take care of the needs of families by expanding the child tax credit.
It is very important to the president and this administration that this is really a tax cut for the middle class and for working families. One of the ways we can deliver a tax cut is through a more generous child tax credit. This administration is pushing for the largest child tax credit possible.
Ralph Reed, president of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, is a strong supporter of increasing the child tax credit. He says he helped President George W. Bush double it to $1,000 16 years ago, but it has not been increased since.
We think it's time. We think it's a heck of a lot more effective for America's children to let those mothers and fathers keep the money than it is to send it to Washington and let bureaucrats and politicians decide how to spend the money.
Grover Norquist, a longtime advocate of tax reform, says it's time to get rid of many of the problems in the current tax code.
Economic growth, creating more jobs is terribly important, but then also going through the code and taking out both inefficiencies, things that are special breaks for some industry or some group, getting rid of those, and making sure that families are a central part of what we worry about.
Norquist says he's pleased that Republicans in the White House and both houses of Congress seem to be unified on the tax plan.
The good news is, Paul Ryan told me that they're in 97% agreement, the House, the Senate, and the White House. So now it's just a question of, we know the ingredients that are going in, just how much of each.
Republicans seem confident they will deliver on their goal of meaningful tax reform by the end of this year. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. Wonderful report. Folks, if there's ever any reason to write your congressman, now is it. We need tax reform. The small businesses need it. And the president is talking about doing away with the death tax so that family farms could be passed on to the next generation and small businesses can be assisted. People who file, for S corps and so forth. These are small businesses, and there's so many of them. These are the job creators of America, much more than the great big corporations. And the little guys need a hand, and this is a tax cut for the middle class. It's a tax cut for small businesses, a tax cut that is urgently needed to make us competitive with the rest of the world. And there's no reason. I mean, if somebody stands in the way of that, there's something wrong with him. And, your congressman needs to understand that you are concerned about it. And if you write your congressman, if you're on the telephone talking to your congressman, or, there's the number. It's real easy to remember, 202-224-3121. That's the number of the Capitol switchboard. Call and say, look, it's time for tax relief for the American people. The tax code is a disgrace. You remember Jimmy Carter said it's a disgrace to the human race? That was kind of a Georgia colloquialism, but that's what he said. It is a disgrace, and it's time it get reformed. And now you've got a president, you've got two houses of Congress that seem to be on board. And there's nothing, we should not allow a small group of naysayers to stand in the way. It's time to get this deal done for the good of America.